because all I had to do was open the facility, and he basically didn't need a coach very much. He took care of everything and half the rest of the team. Um, in high school, he was an all-stater. He worked so hard with other kids that his senior year, somebody broke his home run record, and they got first team All State, and he got second team All State. Um, I saw him kick the kid out of practice one time, and I said, Matty, you can't just kick him out of practice. And he said, well, he doesn't want to work, then he's got to go. So the same kid learned work ethic and came back and broke his home run record at our school and hit 11. Matt was a clutch hitter, um, had 93 RBIs and 92 hits. Went to Dixie State College as a junior college player to give him access to the draft. He could have signed at numerous D1s, but he wanted to be able to be drafted after his first year. He went there his first year, and again had 55 RBIs and 59 hits. Hit 500 in the Junior College World Series. They won the World Series championship, and he was the MVP of the Junior College World Series that year, which got him drafted in the fourth round by the Tampa Bay Rays, Devil Rays at that time. After that, he spent 12 years in organized baseball, playing at a variety of levels up to AAA, and the Red Sox pretty much made him a player coach towards the end, and all the Red Sox players that you see at the catcher position were pretty much trained by Matt. Biggest thing that I can tell you about Matt, though, is he wasn't a lot different than any one of you guys when I got him as a freshman. He had good hand-eye coordination. He loved the game. He had an incredible work ethic. But athletically, he was developing still. And he worked his butt off until he got to where he wanted to be. And I know some of you guys don't have aspirations like that, but Matt wanted to be a professional baseball player from day one. And the two stupidest things I ever did in my entire coaching career, I probably said to Matt. One of which was, Matt, you better learn to hit for average, because if you look at your parents, you're probably not going to be taller than 5'9", and he ended up 6'2". And I told him that. What else did I tell you, Matty? Got the other thing I told.
There wasn't. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, if you do, I'm
No.
like the black sheep of my family. I'm like
Well,
6 inches
yes.
taller than everybody.
Well, the other thing was that Matt didn't catch until the end of his junior year, when my catcher. I can defend myself on this, though. My catcher was going to Arizona State. He was a stud. Hit 460, over 460 all 4 years of his high school career. So he was a stud, but he pulled a muscle from his knee all the way up to his groin. And we literally, the next day, had a tryout for catcher. A tryout. Guys got back there, and we tried out who was going to be the catcher. And Ted Hyde, who was the guy who signed Ichiro, came over to me and said, if Matt was a catcher in high school, he'd probably be the number 5 prospect in his class. And I said, really? So I saw him. I had never played him there. He played first, second, third, pitched, played left field. He played everywhere. I hadn't caught him before in a varsity game. And of course, he won the tryout. And the next day, we were playing a team called Prescott High School, who had the number 1 base stealer in the state. He had stolen 43 straight bases. And he played for the New York Mets in center field. His name is Jason Pridey. I don't know if any of you, he might be too far back for you guys. But the kid could fly. And Matt was the first kid to throw him out. And I just told the coach after the game, and it goes to show you, I don't really, it makes me look pretty bad when I had this kid sitting there and not catching until the end of his junior year, and it was only because of a tryout. But from there, Matt he went crazy. I mean, he just had an unbelievable junior year and an unbelievable senior year. And not only that, but the impact he had on our program with other kids, giving back the way I asked the guys that are on the Cobras, I know the older guys give back. All of that started way back in the early 2000s with kids like Matt. So right now he is. They're sending you back to Double A, Matty. Okay, he's the Double A hitting instructor for the. You can tell them who they are. The Bay Sox.
The Rocket City Trash Pandas.
The Rocket City Trash Pandas. Is that a
Yeah.
change?
Yeah, it was the Mobile Bay Bears, but that team they built a new stadium in Huntsville and we moved up there. So
How do the hats look for the Trash Pandas?
the logo is actually pretty sweet. They've tried to do everything pretty first class, but it's like so NASA has a huge plant right there in Huntsville, so it's got like a little bit of a space theme, but then in the South people call raccoons trash pandas, so
Oh my
because
gosh.
they're always digging through the trash. So I don't know. I'm not from the South, so.
All right. So without further ado, we'll let Matt take over from here.
Oh, well, guys, I appreciate the invite, and I appreciate your guys' attention. I'll try to make this quick. One thing that Coach didn't say is I like to talk and I like to hear myself talk. So hopefully I won't be too boring for you. So just to give you a little idea of what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about some of the things that T just mentioned, and it's nice to hear things that other people think about you, especially later on when you're grown up and as an adult, and you look back at some of those times as the better times of your playing career and times where the game was always fun. Unfortunately, for when baseball becomes your job, there's times that it's really fun and there's times that it's really hard, and there's times that um, it really sucks too. And that's going to be a little bit of the presentation too. And I kind of wanted to preface that because um, there's some parts of the presentation that could be maybe a little bit misconstrued, but it's just a something that especially now being on the coaching side, um, your love and desire just to be around the game or to play the game or to give back to the game is really like what it's all about. And uh, obviously, like I've been coaching for 5 years now. This will be my 5th year. I've really enjoyed it. I'm a far better coach than I was a player. Not because I wasn't talented, not because I wasn't didn't have a ton of God-given abilities, but some of the things that make good coaches are things that make really bad players. And um, my the biggest regret that I had, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in the presentation too, is some of the mental side, some of the mental things of the game, and the way that you handle failure. And I've learned a lot of that as a coach in trying to deal with guys that are going through that and trying to understand where they're at. And my failures have certainly helped me in that department. Because if you guys take some time after this call, it'll probably take away from anything you want to hear about what I have to say about hitting if you go and look at my stats. But my minor league career was a struggle. There were some really good years, there were some really bad years, but it was a struggle that I loved every single day. I would have loved to play in the big leagues for 10 years and have a whole bunch of money in the bank and not be worrying about starting a college fund for my son. But that's my road, and I'm certainly happy with where I'm at. And the light at the end of the tunnel on the coaching side is pretty bright too. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get into this presentation a little bit. All right, so this is I text Coach T and said, hey, don't freak out when you see the first slide of the presentation. So
I thought you were going to bust my balls.
no. So be selfish. This is actually something I heard from somebody that I never thought I'd hear it from. We had a field coordinator when I was with the Tampa Bay Rays. His name was Jim Hoff. He was old school, like be a teammate, be this, be that, like show up early, be the last one to leave. And one day he said, you have to be selfish to make it. And it took me a really long time to understand what he was saying. But it was probably some of the best advice that I ever got. So what does it mean to be selfish? The definition from Webster is concerned with one's own personal gain or success. And so you think about the term selfish, and it means that you're putting yourself before others. And being a part of a team is obviously what this game is built around. And it's a team game built around the personal success of players. And so the term selfish sometimes gets a negative connotation. But I kind of want to explain a little bit about what I mean. So what are you selfish about? Are you selfish about how good your work is? How much energy you bring to the field on a daily basis? Are you selfish about who you put your career in, like whose hands you put your career in? How about how you go about your business on a daily basis? The time that you spent at the grind. And I put the grind there on purpose because if you guys haven't felt it yet, there's going to be times that a baseball season is a grind. And I know that you guys lost your season this year, and I hate that for you guys because the experience of playing games and the experience of trying to come together as a group and do something special is something that I miss the most. Because as a coach, as much impact as you have, the game is not mine anymore. The game is always the players. And we're just there kind of as like the bumpers. If you go to the bowling alley and maybe you have your girlfriend and she's a little unathletic and you guys put the bumpers up so she doesn't feel bad throwing gutter balls the whole time. That's kind of what coaches are. Like you start going to the left and we push you back to the right. And you start going to the right and we push you back to the left. And that's and it's important in saying that because you guys, your career is yours. And no coach will ever be the reason that your career fails, and no coach will ever be the reason that your career is a success. And the accountability of being selfish with all of these things is the whole gist of what I'm talking about. Because Coach T or Coach Hart, I'm sorry, I forgot the other guy's name. I apologize.
Coach Lane, it's all good.
Coach Lane, sorry about that. Those guys are there to help you. They're there to assist you. They're there to build you up. They're there to be better, to help you be better men when you grow up. But they can't control how hard you work. They can't control the energy that you bring. That's a personal choice. They can't control the time that you put in, and they can't control how selfish you are with the time that you have in your career. And I say that not as a scare tactic, but I played for 12 seasons professionally. I played 1 year in junior college. I played through high school. I played in all the traveling tournaments, all the showcases. I did all that stuff, and it literally felt like a blink of an eye. And luckily, the career that I'm in now, I can do that for quite some time. But any player, be it Derek Jeter or Alex Rodriguez or some dude that plays one season of pro ball, you can't do it for your whole life. And but the things that you can learn from this game in your time in the game, dealing with failure, those are things that can really push your career after baseball or your career with whatever you end up doing. So this is just a short little video from Andrew Luck. And if you can't hear it, just let me know.
Can't hear it.
Okay, just a second.
So I can help you with this.
Yeah.
Go for it, coach.
Unshare. So stop sharing up at the top.
Okay.
And then when you share again, but don't hit, hit share screen, the green button. And then at the bottom
Okay.
left of the pop out, there's a share computer sound option.
Oh, got it. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nice job, coach. Honorary tech member.
All right, let's start this over here.
I felt like how I've progressed is how that I needed to progress, and how my body and how my shoulder would handle things. So I haven't been too worried or too caught up in I need to be here by a certain date or here by a certain date, because then I think it's unfair to the process that I'm going through with, you know, the doctors, trainers, rehab, everybody. I have not felt any undue pressure or unwarranted pressure, I think, to do something that might not be in my best self-interest. And it's weird to sort of be selfish in a sense, but again, for talking to guys and the trainers and the doctors and everybody, you sort of have to make sure you take care of yourself. I say that.
So
I
wanted to use Andrew Luck for a reason, because I would say that most of us would see him as probably one of the most selfless players in the NFL. Guy works hard, keeps his head down, unbelievable work ethic. But you hear him talking about like him going through rehab, and even he feels uncomfortable saying the word selfish, right? But he was being selfish for the right reasons, and he was being selfish in going through his rehab to make sure that he was right, so that in turn he could be best for the team. And if he would have rushed that or let anybody else dictate his process through his rehabilitation, he wouldn't have been at his best. Okay. So now I'm gonna go through the word selfish a little bit, and I think it's an anagram. But you guys go to private school. I went to public school, but I think it's an anagram. So self-evaluation. Who's your biggest critic? And I can honestly tell you, and Coach T can probably back me on this, there was nobody that was harder on Matt Spring than me. Like it just, and to be honest with you, towards the end of my career, it was actually probably a little bit of a downfall for me. But nobody could tell me something about my game. Nobody could tell me something about my work ethic that I didn't already know and wasn't already addressing with myself. Can you be honest with yourself? Can you sit there and say, man, I didn't work hard enough today? Or you know what? I did everything I could do today to get better. And this is a big one for me. Can you be positive? Can you find some kind of optimism? Can you find some kind of positive aspect from a game that maybe you didn't go 4 for 4? Maybe you went 0 for 4. Did you do something to help the team? And I'm going to touch on that for a second, because we play and work in a game of failure. And when the team loses and you don't get any hits, it's really hard to find some way to be positive and push forward. And sometimes that positive isn't always something that happened great, right? But maybe that positive is something small. And a small little win in the war of the game can actually be something that catapults you into the next day, and you feel some kind of momentum going through the season. And that's why they call it a grind, because you're going to have days like that. And when you can't find those little battles and those little wins, that's what makes the season seem so hard, so long, and so treacherous. Can you give yourself self-constructive criticism? And I say constructive criticism because there's a big difference. Sitting there telling yourself you suck, or sitting there telling yourself, I got out because I swung at bad pitches. And those are two completely different things. And the constructive part is figure out why the failure happened so that you can address it. Saying that you suck because you struck out is completely different than saying I struck out because I swung at bad pitches. Understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and this is huge. the way that you go through self-evaluation and being honest with yourself, knowing your strengths and knowing your weaknesses are great, because you don't want to just say, oh, I'm really good at this, so I don't have to work at it anymore. The things that you're good at, you want to continue to excel, but knowing where your weaknesses are and being honest with yourself and saying, you know, I'm a below average base runner as far as maybe technique or speed or awareness. And that's something that you can go, all right, how can I get better at this? And Coach T was kind of talking about it, and I'm just using it as an example because he can vouch for it. I was, as a freshman in high school, I ran an 8.660, which, if you know anything about this 60-yard dash, that's a terrible, terrible time. It's, I mean, like, people were probably turning around and having conversations while I was trying to finish. So, but right before I got drafted, I ran a 6.7, and that's not, hey, pat myself on the back, but I worked really hard to become at least an average runner, and got to a point where I was a little above average. And but I knew that I had to get faster. I knew that my athleticism needed some work. And can you hold yourself accountable? And this goes back to coaches are the bumpers. They don't know what you're doing in your downtime. They don't know, you know, when you're working out in the off season and there's no organized practices, they're not in control of that. And the only person that is you. So here's a little video. And this is Nick Senzel. He's a young player in the major leagues. He was a really high pick, and made it to the big leagues really fast. I think it took like a year and a half, but I just really like this clip because he's made it to the big leagues and he's rich. He signed for $6 million, and he still has a pretty good self-evaluation technique here.
Games for us.
Self-assess yourself. What do you think you have to work on?
I mean, I think I can work on everything, to be honest with you. I mean, you know, the day you don't think you can work on something, I think is the day that you should probably hang up the cleats. It's such a long season, and you know, it's a grind, but your focus has got to be here every single day because it's your job, and I love playing this game, and I want to, you know, be the best out here, and I'm going to continue to try to work to be able to do that.
Reds did all their damage
So
in inning.
obviously pretty cool to hear from a young player that has a bunch of money in the bank. He's made it to the big leagues. But he's still hungry for what else is out there. He's not content with that. And being content is you know, it's a slippery slope too. You know, are you content with the job that you have? And you obviously have to be happy with where you're at, but that doesn't take away from working towards your goals of the future. And I just thought it was a really cool thing to see a young player who's got a bunch of money and he's made it to the big leagues already, still wanting to get better. Next one's E, enthusiasm. What kind of energy can you bring to the field every day? What kind of effort can you bring to the field every day? Is effort and energy a choice? What kind of attitude do you bring every single day? Are you excited to work? And some of the takeaways I hear from guys that are retiring, it's not that they don't think that they could play the game anymore. It's not that they don't love the game anymore. But the majority of the time, it's they are uncommitted to the work. And when you hear guys say that, you're just like, whoa, that's weird. Like, you know, Derek Jeter retires, and even some of the most recent retirements, and it's the work just got too hard. They didn't enjoy the work. And, you know, it's crazy to hear guys that are so good, Hall of Famers, sit here and talk about, yeah, I just didn't like to work anymore. And so when you say that, when you hear guys like that say that they didn't like the work anymore, it's like, wow, he just figured out that he didn't like the work, and he played in the big leagues for 21 years, you know, like that's when you hear guys with that kind of clout say stuff like that, it's just kind of takes you back a little bit, like, man, did I enjoy the work all that time? And I want to touch on a couple of the first things. energy is a choice. How much energy you have every single day is a choice. I know that there's things that tie into your energy. How much sleep did you get? Are you hydrated? Both of those are choices. Okay, so let's not get that misconstrued. Effort. Your effort on a daily basis is a choice. Nobody gets to decide how much effort you're going to put in, just you. And I feel really comfortable saying this to you guys as freshmen, eighth graders, seniors, however old you are, because I would say that I'm definitely a pushover as a dad. But I have this conversation with my 7-year-old on a daily basis. Your attitude, your energy, your focus, and your effort is a choice every single day. Nobody gets to make that choice for you. And that ties into the last thing of being excited to work. Is the work worth it? Like, is it worth it for you? Like, is the work worth not letting your teammates down? Is the work worth, committing to something and following through? And those are things that go far beyond this game. And your coworkers are going to rely on you for the rest of your life. You're going to work around people that when they're not pulling your weight, it's going to piss you off. And you have to ask yourself, am I ever the one that does that? Because that's a choice. So you guys are going to know who this is. And I just put this clip in here because I thought it was pretty cool to see the best player in the world talk about the game in this way.
I was born to play baseball. But where I'm from, we never take anything for granted.
Come on, Mike. Let's go.
I was raised to value hard work and to practice respect. I still call my parents before every game, and this guy has trained me since high school. I grew up playing other sports, and I still make time for things I love. My friends are a source of inspiration, and my dad is still my hero. Maybe I'm not what everyone wants me to be, but I'm exactly who I've always been. I don't play for the fame, the money, or the endorsements. I'm still that same old kid with a big dream and a decent swing. Some say I'm the best to play the game. Me? I just want to play.
So I don't know about you guys, but I have goosebumps all over my body right now. And one of the coolest things that I've gotten to do in my coaching career is sit and work with the best player in the world. And I will say that that video does not do the human being that Mike Trout is any justice. He's an unbelievable person, cares about his teammates, works his tail off every single day. And yeah, like he says he was born to play baseball. God made him better than more physically gifted, more athletic than the majority of people in the world. And you can't argue those facts. But the amount of effort and time and focus and energy that he puts into the game, himself, his teammates, is real. And I played with one of his best friends growing up in the minor leagues, in the Dominican Winter League, and Cole Calhoun, who's now with the Diamondbacks. And so Cole and I had a really good relationship, and it was pretty neat that because they were such good friends. I remember last spring training, we're sitting there and me and Cole are sitting there, BSing a little bit in the cage, and he walks in and Trout walks in and he's like, "Hey man, what's up? I'm Mike." And I was like, "Hey dude, I'm Matt. Like, nice to meet you." And Cole vouched for me and he said, "Hey dude, this guy's one of us." And from that day forward, I've gotten to build a relationship with one of the best players in the world. And he loves to compete and he loves to have fun doing what he does. And he is literally having fun. And that is like I said, that video is him, but it does him no justice. he loves to compete so much that him and I have had competitions of whether I could hit a soft toss pitch off the batter's eye when we were doing outfield drills. Competing, hitting off this little red pitching machine we have that shoots little soft rise balls, and seeing who could hit the most line drives. And he loves to compete, and he's having fun with everything that he's doing. Oops. So that kind of goes into love. So putting someone or something in front of another is the definition in Webster's dictionary. And so I'm going to ask you guys, do you love preparation? Do you love the hard days? Do you love the grind? Do you love getting knocked down just to prove you can get back up again? And to me, guys, far beyond the stretches of the game, the last thing on this slide, do you love getting knocked down just to prove you can get back up again? Life's hard. I mean, we're in the midst of something that's never happened before in this country, or at least not in any of our lifetimes. Maybe T, because he's old. But that's the definition to me of a man. And I'm sure that some people would agree, some people wouldn't. But to me, the definition of a man is who you are when you're facing adversity, who you are when you're facing failure. And that's one of the things that I love about this game. I love being able to impact guys. And you're not defined by your failures in life. You're defined by how you respond to them. And how you respond to life in every aspect of your life is going to define who you are. And unfortunately, bad things happen, like things that you wouldn't even fathom, like when I was making this, I was like, what would be something that would just absolutely knock me down? And, there's really hard things in life. There's being told that nobody thinks you're good enough to play baseball anymore. Is that life threatening? Not by any stretch of the imagination, right? Like, and is that a problem that I had to deal with that some other people don't? Absolutely. But that was hard. And when you've been a baseball player for the first 31 years of your life, and you're 31 years old and you look in the mirror and you have to tell yourself you're not a baseball player anymore, you have to, okay, so who am I? Or going through, the things that life brings us, a death in the family, divorce, losing jobs, and all those things, life's gonna knock you down. They say there's only two guarantees in life, death and taxes. Well, I can assure you that life's unfair. So you're not gonna get promotions even though you deserve it. You might not get a scholarship to play baseball even though you deserve it. And it's not about what happens to you or the failures that you have in your life, but it's about how you respond to them. So this does say a swear word in it. I apologize. I'm sure you guys have heard the word before, but this is a clip that I love.
Taking a little day trip?
No, Bob and I are driving home to Oregon.
I really thought you were a ball player.
Well, you were wrong.
Was I?
Yeah, it is only a game, Jimmy. It's only a game, and I don't need this. I have Bob. I don't need this. I don't.
I gave away 5 years at the end of my career to drinking. 5 years. And now there isn't anything I wouldn't give to get back any one day of it.
Well, we're different.
This chicken shit, Dottie. You want to go back home to Oregon and make 100 babies? Great. I'm in no position to tell anyone how to live. But sneaking out like this, Quitting. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. Baseball is what gets inside you. It's what lights you up. You can't deny that.
It just got too hard.
It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great.
So I just love that because this game's hard, you know, like there's some other great sporting, you know, there's some other great sports. There's other great team games. Baseball's hard. If any one of your teachers only got 3 out of every 10 students to pass their class, they wouldn't be a very good teacher. If you get hits 3 out of every 10 at bats, you're one of the best players in the world. And I just love how he says that. If it was hard, everybody would do it. You know, like, you know, shooting a basketball, yeah, it's tough. You know, playing the NBA, it's tough. But if you shoot it and you shoot it perfect, what happens? It goes in. But if you hit a line drive, perfect, right on the screws, square it up, and the shortstop standing in the way, you're out. And that's what I love about that clip and love about the game. Failure, and that's kind of leads me into that portion of it. Will failure happen? Yes. Period. Especially in this game, in life, failure is going to happen. How can you handle failure? Does failure define you as a player? And that's a choice. And I can honestly tell you that there were times in my career that my failure did define me as a player. And that was some of the things that I was talking about earlier. Getting over the failure and not winning those little daily battles can really beat you down. Can you shift your focus from failure to focus on success? And that kind of touches on what I was talking about earlier. I suck, I struck out, or I suck because I swung at bad pitches. I swung at pitches out of the zone. I didn't make him throw me a strike. That's a constructive criticism that I can work on, but just telling yourself you suck does no good. Here's another little video, and there's a reason why I put these videos in here, because hearing from other people about the same topic is important.
You've had a unique journey here. What would you like people to kind of take from your journey the last few years and kind of be inspired by?
I think the big thing is don't be afraid to fail. In our society today, you know, Instagram, Twitter, it's a highlight reel. You know, it's all the good things. And then when you look at it, you know, you think like, wow, when you have a rough day or your life's not as good as that, like, you know, you're failing. You know, failure is part of life. That's a part of building character and growing. Like, without failure, who would you be? I wouldn't be up here if I hadn't fallen thousands of times, made mistakes. We all are human. We all have weaknesses. And I think throughout this, just being able to share that and be transparent. I know when I listen to people speak and they share their weaknesses, I'm listening because I can resonate. So I'm not perfect. I'm not Superman. We might be in the NFL and we might have just won the Super Bowl, but hey, we still have daily struggles. I still have daily struggles. So, but that's where my faith comes in. That's where my family comes in. And, you know, I think when you look at a struggle in your life, just know that, you know, that's just an opportunity for your character to grow. And that's really just been the message. It's simple. Like, if something's going on in your life and you're struggling, embrace it because you're growing. I'm not really worried about my future right now.
So I use this analogy with my players a lot. And if you guys don't know Nick Foles' story, I'm not going to sit here and bore you with it, but check it out. It's pretty cool. He went through a lot of adversity, had a lot of highs and lows in his career. But I talk to my players a lot, and sometimes in life it feels like, you know, you're just getting chopped down. Well, I heard this analogy about an arborist, and if you don't know what an arborist is, it's somebody that doesn't just cut trees, but they understand what trees need and plants need to grow and be strong and successful plants or trees. And so, if you know, I know this. I called an arborist one time because I had a giant oak tree in my front yard, and he was like, yeah, dude, we can fix that. Like, the tree's healthy. It just needs a little bit of help. And I was like, okay, you know, I really like the shade that the tree puts off on one side. And So if we could keep that, and he said, no, we can't. We have to teach the tree how to grow again. And so sometimes in life when it feels like everything's against you and you're just getting knocked down and knocked down, those are the times that you're just learning how to grow again. And that's super important.
You've had a unique
Intensity, intense in your work, intense in your preparation, intense in your development, intense in competition, intense in your failures. And the word intensity kind of sums it up in itself. But it's really important for the type of intensity that you bring, not only in the classroom and in life, but also to the field. So I know that we're getting a little short on time. I'll try to hurry this up a little bit.
No hesitation at all. Send him all the way. You see the catcher have to reach back for the ball.
It's all bullshit, Billy. Don't listen to it. You've done it all. You've won every award there is to win. You've got a room reserved at Cooperstown, Billy. I just don't know how much more you have to prove. And even if you do come back, you're not going to be 100%. Billy, you may not even be 50.
What'd you say?
Nothing. Let's knock off for today. Jane's here.
What did you say?
I didn't say anything.
You said if.
I didn't mean if.
Yeah, but you said if.
Come on, I only meant that.
You think I'm not coming back?
Billy.
Say it.
You're tired. Let's quit.
Say it, chicken shit. You got a job. That's to get me strong and get me back. All right? You get me back, I'll figure out how to win.
So I just like that. I just like that. It's from for the love of the game, but the type of intensity that he's bringing there, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
No hesitation at all. Send him all the way.
Strong. Are you, and this is big for you guys. Are you physically strong? Are you mentally strong? Are you strong enough to overcome your current situation and find the best in the struggles? And you guys are obviously just developing, and you know, some of you guys are young, some of you guys are towards the end of your careers, but physical strength is obviously important, but the mental strength stuff is huge. And I know we've talked about it a little bit, and there's a ton of resources for that. And I certainly am no expert in that category, but mental strength is really important, and not just in the aspect of baseball, but in the aspect of life. We'll skip that one. This is a big one, and this is the last one, obviously. It's a H, but the definition of humility is to be modest without an excess of pride. Give others credit before yourself. Humility is huge, and it comes along with self-evaluation and asking yourself, how can I be humble? And there's a big difference between confidence and cockiness, and I think that that's really important, and that's why I wanted to share this part with you guys. Confidence is an inward expression. You don't have to act a certain way to be confident. Obviously, it helps to have good posture, but that's exuding your confidence. That's not the confidence on the inside. That's how people see your confidence. But confidence comes from within. And humility is a way that an outward expression. Like, you can know that inside you can be humble, but people won't know you're humble until they see an outward expression of your humility. And this is the last clip, and I think that this is important.
Right behind you. Derek, you've always had a flair for the dramatic. Tonight, certainly no exception. What was going through your mind as you stepped into that batter's box one last time?
Don't cry. To be honest with you, I don't know how I played this game. I went up my first at bat. I forgot my elbow guard. I was throwing balls away. I was giving signs to Drew at second base, and there's no one on base. So I was all messed up. But I want to thank everyone here. I've said it time and time again. Everybody's chanting, "Thank you, Derek," and I'm thinking to myself, for what? You know, I'm just trying to do my job. So thank you guys.
So obviously you guys know who that is. One of the best players to ever play the game. I actually got a chance to meet him a couple times and talk to him just briefly, nothing really in depth, but I'll tell one quick story to end, and it talks about his humility and who he is. My very first year in professional baseball, I got a chance to go to Major League Camp just to work with the catching instructor. I wasn't very good at catching at the time, and they just wanted to invest a little bit more time in my defense. So we're playing in Tampa against the Yankees in spring training. And growing up, Alex Rodriguez was my favorite player. And before the game, I actually sent over a bat to have Alex sign it for me. And he did, and he put to Matt, you know, yada, 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 whatever. I think he only did it because Don Zimmer is the one that took it over there. So that was – so Zim hooked me up. But so the bat came back, and he was out running sprints before the game. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to run out there and say thanks. And I'm not telling this story so you guys think bad about Alex Rodriguez, but I ran out there. I met him in center field. I said, hey, Alex, you know, thanks for the bat. I appreciate it. Have a good one. And he looked at me and didn't even say a word and went, huh, and started doing his sprints. And I was like, oh, like, this dude was like, I love this guy. Like, I did art projects drawing pictures of this dude. Like, and like, he doesn't know me. I know he's trying to get ready for the game and stuff, but like, not even a word. And I got a chance to play in that game, and I hit a double. I don't remember who was off. I got to second base, and Derek Jeter came up behind me, and he goes, hey, man, nice swing. And I was like, what? Like, what? Yeah, thanks, dude. I appreciate it. He's like, you're young. You keep doing that. You'll be here in no time. And he didn't have to say that to me. He didn't know me from Adam. I didn't send a bat over to get him to sign. I should have. But that just talks to his character and who he is. And you see this clip, and it's like, wow, this dude played for a long time, has tons of accolades, MVPs, World Series rings, Gold Gloves, all that stuff. And he's sitting there talking about his career, like, for what? And that's an expression of humility. So that's all I got for that, guys. So I know that we're running out of time. I had a few other things prepared, but I'll open it up to questions so I don't take up too much more of you guys' time. Feel free, just unmute yourself and ask away.
What do you look for in a hitter? Is there like one thing?
There's a ton of things that I would look at mechanically. That's my job. But the one thing that really sticks out, and you hear people talk about it all the time, and Coach T was actually telling a story, like bragging on me a little bit before. And there's got to be a competitiveness and a desire to be better than the pitcher. And that's, no coach can teach you that. No, there's no mechanic in the world that will do that for you. It's about trying to be better than the guy in the mound. And that's an innate quality that not everybody has, but is detrimental to players if they don't have it.
I got another question. So, like, what was your day in the life, like when you're in the minor leagues, like how, on a game day, like what was your routine usually?
Yeah, that's a good question. So typically the games are around 7 o'clock, 6:35, something like that. I would usually wake up and have some breakfast around 9 or 10 and start making my way to the field. I'd usually get there about noon, get a workout in, do some stretching and, all kinds of corrective exercises to make sure that your body's in good shape. Head to the cage, usually around 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and work on whatever I was working on that day. Whatever the hitting coach, I had some good ones and bad ones, and my career is I'm accountable for all of my at bats, and So it's not anybody's fault that I struggled besides myself. But I would head to the cage and try to work on something, get better for the day, go outside, catch pens. After pens, I would usually take ground balls to just keep my feet and my athleticism moving a lot, moving along a little bit. Take batting practice, come back in. They usually had some kind of dinner for us before the game. Sometimes I'd sit there and, just BS back and forth with the other guys. Like, I loved being in the clubhouse. That's something that I'll always miss. The camaraderie that I have from a coaching standpoint is nothing like the camaraderie I had as a player. About 45 minutes before the game, I was pretty, some might call it superstitious, but I was pretty routine oriented. 45 minutes before the game, I'd be dressed. I would be going, I'd have my headphones in, listening to whatever was going to get me going for the day. And and Coach C could probably vouch for me on this. I kind of played the game at a pretty emotional level. I was pretty high energy and high emotion player. So I wasn't sitting there listening to like heavy rap or rock and roll. I was probably listening to Adele or something that was going to slow my heart rate down a little bit. That's what worked for me anyway. I didn't need, I was pretty intrinsically motivated. I didn't need exterior motivation. And that's not a knock on anybody for listening to music that pumps them up. That's just what I did. Go play the game. After the game, I had a hard time eating right after the game. So I would usually hit the cold tub, maybe go do some exercises in the gym to make sure that my body was going to be ready for the next day. And then usually get home around 12 or 12:30 in the morning. So, long days, but that's why some of those, you saw me use the word grind so much, because you're at the field for 12 hours every day, and people don't realize that it's more than just the 3.5 or 4 hour game that you play that goes into it when you're at that level.
Who's got the next question?
How often would you hit in high school? Like, probably every day, but like how long and what were you trying to accomplish?
I'm not sure that I have the answer of what I was trying to accomplish. I just knew that I wanted to be better. As far as how much I hit, I don't want to like fabricate it too much, but I would hit until they told me I had to stop.
I can jump in for you on this one, Matty.
Go ahead.
He hit until dark or well after dark with a couple other guys that were motivated. And of course, anytime you're on a team, a few guys are motivated and some guys aren't. But he had another guy who was very motivated when he was a freshman, when he was young like you guys. And Matt would hit with this
Trevor?
guy. Yeah, Trevor Hyde. He would hit with Trevor, and Trevor would take 5 rounds to Matt's 1, and he was just happy that he was in there with Trevor, who also got drafted. They also played junior college together, and he would just stay there and get his turns to hit. He would hit and hit, and then later on, when it came time, I always tell you guys, I don't know how good you're going to be until you get the keys to a car, a job, and all that kind of stuff. Well, Matt got the keys to his Jeep. He got the job, and then he realized that he only needed the job because he had the car. So he got rid of the car, got rid of the job, and just went up. Did I give you the key to the cage, Matt? I gave him the key to the cage because I couldn't spend as much time as he spent up there, and he just hit all the time. And he bought a bike so he could ride his bike to the school as a junior in high school and senior. Rode his bike to the school and hit and hit and hit and hit and hit and hit. In fact, I thought, Matt, when you were in your first year of pro ball, didn't you tell me that you had to be told that, listen, you can't take 200 swings a day. You're going to wear out in August.
Yeah, they were really trying to dial me back, and it was for my own benefit. But because that is true, you will wear out, especially in a long season. But yeah, it was, I like I kind of touched on before. I was a big self-critic, and sometimes I didn't always know what I needed to be working on, and that's my own fault. But I knew that I wasn't going to leave a stone unturned, and I wasn't willing to just take it for what it was. So if that meant taking 500 swings in a day, I was going to do it.
And Matt, in your role now as a hitting coach, and different from being a player, and do you have a 5 drills or a routine that you have just for your team to work on, or do you do stuff that's more individually prescribed for each player?
Yeah, everything we do is individualized. Everybody, one guy might struggle with his path, one guy might struggle with his lower half, and we try not to try to make sure we're diagnosing each player individually. I have probably 300 drills that I think are good drills that I might use with one guy. I might use a different one with another guy, depending on what I see or how he's struggling with his path. But there's a few huge things, in my opinion, for the swing, and just the initial load part of it really sets up for failure or success. And so until I can get a guy into a good position in his load, I can't really fix much else. So that's what I focus on first. And then once I know a guy has a load that will get his body into a position to succeed, then I can work from there.
And I've brought that to our program, Matt, and to the Cobras, because you told me that like 90% of swing flaws come from improper loads. So we work on that, and I make them do that on tee work and everything else.
Yeah, if we have just 3 or 4 minutes, I know that I've run out of time here. I actually have a couple videos that I made, and I'll show you the first video, and then we'll kind of talk about it, and then I want you to see what I was talking about from the first video to the second, if that's okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
What's the best advice you ever gotten from a coach?
That's tough. I've gotten so many good pieces of advice. I think oftentimes the best things you get from coaches are words of encouragement, and I would say that those were the things that catapulted my career the most. So I'm gonna share this video real quick, and then we'll talk about how it translates to the game after that. And it's in slow motion for a reason. There's some things that I want you guys to see here. So obviously you guys know that's Tom Brady. He's just throwing a football, right? But he's being an athlete. And I want you to notice the arrows, and we'll talk about the arrows in a second. So those are football athletes, right? You guys know that's Mike Tyson, probably the most devastating boxer of all time. And just pay attention to those arrows. Obviously, that's Cristiano Ronaldo kicking a soccer ball. And just pay attention to the arrows. So what you guys see there is guys being athletes, right? They're playing their sport. But those arrows are there for a reason. Okay, so when we talk about the load, and I could throw a bunch of fancy scientific terminology at you but I don't think that that's how young hitters learn. But you see that the body is working apart to then work together. And the lower half is doing one thing and the upper half is doing another. And they either work together up and down or they work apart. They don't work simultaneously. And what I want you guys to understand is when I talk about getting into a good low position, we call it sequencing. So we have to make sure that we're sequencing our body so that it can work kinematically or biomechanically correct, right? If you, just in layman's terms, the kinematic sequence starts from the ground, from ground pressure. It goes to the pelvis or your hips, then it goes to the torso, your chest and your abs, then it goes to your levers, your arms, and then it goes to the back. And basically how you would like that to look is in like a waterfall kind of effect. So you get your force from the ground, it goes to your pelvis starts going really fast, your pelvis stops and speeds up your torso starts going really fast, your torso stops, speeds up your arms start going really fast, and that's what delivers the ultimate lever of the bat. And so that's why the initial position that you get into, the initial position once you get to foot strike and your front heel hits the ground, you're only as good as that position is. And what I want you guys to know is, and there's a reason why I share videos. I know you guys talked to Mark Teixeira last week, or a couple weeks ago. That's fantastic. And if Mark Teixeira and I started having a debate about hitting, and I'm not saying that we have different opinions, but what I am saying is, whose word are you gonna take? Because if you take mine over Mark Teixeira's, you're an idiot. Because that dude did it for a long time at a really high level, right? And that's why I don't want you to just take my word for this. This isn't Matt Spring's way of hitting. I've learned this from watching really successful big leaguers. And that's the video that I'm gonna kind of get into right now. Because it's super important to understand what position these guys are putting their body into to make sure that they can have some success. And I will share this real quick.
Matt, they're better off listening to you. Mark, when the really, really good ones, the all-stars, explain things in a different way. To Mark, hitting was all about staying loose in the on-deck circle and seeing the ball and hitting the ball. That was it. He didn't do any kind of breakdown because he was talented.
And that's he was crazy talented. And the biggest thing is I can't teach hitting off a feeling, because something that I feel might be completely different. And so what my job is to diagnose the problem, understand the path to fixing it, but allowing the player to be the guide. And the player is the one that has to share what they're feeling so that I can tie their feeling, whether it's right or wrong, to what they're trying to do. And so this is just a quick little video. You guys are going to notice some of these players, and then we'll just talk about it real quick afterwards. Can you guys see the screen? Okay.
Yes.
So that's Barry Bonds, right? And regardless of what you want to say about Barry Bonds, he's one of the best that's ever done it. So that's Mike Trout, right? So if you start thinking about some of those arrows that you saw on Tom Brady or Mike Tyson, start trying to tie those together with what you're seeing from Trout here. So this is Ted Williams, obviously the last guy that's ever hit 400. This guy, some of you guys probably don't like because of what he's done to the Yankees, but just notice where those arrows would be as he's going through some of these things.
Matt,
And
the terminology we use is the upper body works against the lower body, and the hips lead the hands to the ball.
for sure. And so, and for that to happen, it's super important. So you're just watching Big Poppy right here, right? So the knob of the bat and his knee, they work together, right? They work in a movement of going together, and then they're going to work apart. So see the space that he creates between his knee and his hand. So then you go back here to Mike Trout, and you're going to watch the knob of the bat and his knee work together, and then they start to work apart. Okay? That's a common theme here. Barry Bonds, his knob and his knee get closer together, and then they get further apart. Now there's some other guys here that you guys are gonna recognize, and I just want you to know that it's a common theme. And these moves, the moves that these guys are doing are gonna start to get smaller because everybody doesn't have to have a giant leg kick, right? So you guys know who this is, Robinson Cano. So you notice right here, when he's getting into his load, sorry, I'm trying to slow-mo this for you. So notice his hands start to work down, then they start to work back when the ball's in the air and his body's going forward. And obviously, regardless of how you feel about him, he's a really good hitter. So Javi Baez, okay, huge move, right? His knob works down with his knee, and then his knees and his hands work apart. Josh Donaldson, knee and knob together, apart. Albert Pujols, right? A little bit smaller. Knob and knee work together, then they work apart. This is Willie Mays. So really small move, right? Like doesn't make much move backwards. But notice his lower body is not going back while his upper body's going back, right? That's the most important thing here. So when his upper body is moving, it's either moving closer together or it's moving further apart from his lower half. And he's not loading his body back and his hands back at the same time. So this is somebody that Coach Torella coached. This was when I was a senior in high school. He was a freshman. And like the story that Coach Torella was telling you about Trevor, I was a little bit nicer than Trevor was, but this was my workout buddy. And he's obviously had an unbelievable career now. It's not anything that I did, but this was my hitting buddy. And you can see that he has not much movement with the upper half, right? So his hands kind of start in a back position, but when his body starts to go forward, his hands start to work up and back. And this is a pretty good representation of it right here. So his hands don't go back until his body goes forward. Okay, so
I will say this though, Matt, his swing hasn't changed very much at all from what it
No.
was in high school. He just got bigger and stronger, but
Yeah.
his swing is pretty close to the same.
Yeah, and you know, and that's something that we find a lot. One of the projects that I'm working on right now, and just because we're not playing, is going through the guys that are going to be in the draft, the top 50 hitters that they think are going to go, the top 50, the first 50 hitters that are taken, and kind of diagnosing it. And that's why I really wanted to share that with you guys, because as hard as you work and as much effort and energy and focus you put in to your swing, your body creates neural pathways. Okay, I'm going to get a little scientific for a second, but then I'm going to dumb it down. Every time that you take a swing, your body creates a neural pathway. Okay, and that's the electronic impulses that your brain is telling your body parts to move. Okay, the more that you do the same thing, whether it's right or wrong, your body keeps using that same neural pathway. Okay, the more that you use that same neural pathway, your body insulates that neural pathway with something that's called myelin. Okay, the more myelin that is around a neural pathway, the faster and easier it works. Okay, that's why if somebody changes your setup or changes your stance, it feels so bad That's because your body wants to go back to that same neural pathway. Okay. So the reason that that's important is you guys are in the prime stage of your life to create neural pathways. Okay. So any neural pathway that you're creating and you're insulating with myelin is going to be there until there's significant work that changes that. And so the importance of putting your body in good positions, like you say, oh, I'm just a freshman. Well, your swing's not going to change much once you've created some neural pathways. And the more that you do things right now, and you guys don't even know what this is, but we used to have phones in our house, and they had this little tiny cable with a little bit of insulation, and that's how we had internet at first. It was called dial-up. Well, now we have Wi-Fi and all that other stuff, but they have DSL cable now, and it's a thicker cable, and it's got more insulation. And what does it do? It pushes the internet faster, right? It allows those electrical impulses to get to your computer so that when you click on MLB.com and you pull up a video, it goes fast. The more myelin you have around something, it's going to go fast. If that neural pathway is a flaw or something that needs to change, it's going to be hard to undo that. It's not impossible, but it makes it hard. And that's why putting your body into a good position to hit is so important at a young age, because like I told you before, if I can't get a guy to sequence his body right, it doesn't matter. All the work that I do on his path, all the work that I do on his lower half, all the work I do on his pelvis, all that stuff, it's going to go out the window if he doesn't put his body into a good position. And that's why I wanted to share those videos with you, because it's not Matt Spring's way of hitting. I just showed you 10 or 12 dudes that are some of the best dudes that have ever done it. And it might not look the same. It might not be the same size. It might be a little bit smaller. It might be a little bit bigger. But the one thing that I urge you to watch video and see what some of these guys are doing. None of them, nobody in the big leagues, and this is a fact. Nobody in the big leagues loads their body back and their hands back at the same time. Their hands might start to go back, but when their body goes forward, their hands continue to work back and up, right? So like I'm sure that a lot of you guys have heard a coach say, well, don't arm bar. Okay, well, the reason you're arm barring is because your hands are moving with your body when you load back and you run out of space. Okay, your arms are only so long. And so once you get to a certain point, then the whole body has to come together. And you notice that none of those guys, their whole body was coming together, right? It was their lower half was coming, getting into a good position. Their arms were and their upper body were working back. That creates elasticity. It creates a rubber band. The farther you stretch a rubber band, the harder it shoots. The reason I say that is because the harder it shoots is your bat speed. You want to create bat speed, right? You want to do it in the right way. You don't have bat speed because of no elasticity. You don't have the ability to adjust to different pitches. And then you become a one swing at one speed, at one pitch hitter.
That's the most common flaw in these guys from 14-year-olds to 18-year-olds is they can be successful hitting one pitch in one spot from the time when they're 14, 13, 12, 11. They all hit well, throwing everything at the ball. And they can't when people start changing speeds and hitting spots.
Nope. And that's that creates adjustability. So to kind of like to try to move through that a little bit, the reason that happens is their elbow it keeps their back elbow in motion. None of those guys ever came to a stop and then restarted. So some of you guys are young and you haven't driven yet, but if there's a car parked at a stoplight and there's another car that's moving 10 miles an hour, when that light turns green, which one's going to get to 60 miles an hour first? It's the one that's already moving, right? And so if your back elbow stops because of a bad load or a bad sequence, once that back elbow stops, you have to restart your engine again. So you might as well turn off the key, turn it back on, and then hit the gas. If you keep that elbow moving and you keep your body creating sustainable energy, then you can actually translate that into bat speed and have a little bit of adjustability. Any other questions?
Yeah, Matt, I have a question. When you're talking about the sequence, is it a problem if there's too much weight shift, or should you be teaching weight shift from rear foot in that sequence? Like, does that create the problem of the hand going back at the same time with the lower body? Do you teach it to be more balanced?
Yeah, and like before, it's kind of on an individual basis. Like you saw Big Poppy's move, right? So there's a ton of weight shift to the backside, right? Because he has a huge leg kick. But you notice he keeps everything else in the middle. And so his weight is shifting back, but because he keeps it in the middle, it makes it controllable to be balanced at the end, if that makes sense.
Sure.
And so much like Josh Donaldson, right? Ton of moving parts, huge move, huge leg kick, but somehow, because of him putting himself into a good position, he's able to then in turn translate that into bat speed and adjustability. And so the only things that we talk about as far as weight shift goes, like, oh, he's diving, oh, he's lunging, this, that, and the other. The vast majority of successful hitters in the big leagues and the vast majority of superstars in the big leagues, when they make contact, their head is behind their center of mass. And so basically we call it spine angle with them. Their spine angle is going to be slightly back to the backside to allow the swing to actually work on plane with the pitch. And so that means once you get too much, if the load and the weight shift that you're creating is causing your head to be forward, you're going to have to make a posture adjustment in the middle of your swing, and that leads to a ton of swing and miss. And so it's about being able to control the weight shift to make sure that your spine is behind your center of mass. And as far as forward movement, I know that that's a huge thing. It's hard to teach. It's hard to teach for us. It's hard to teach for anybody. Basically, how I describe it is you can move as far forward as you want as long as your spine is back. And your head can move as far forward as you would like until you get to front heel strike. So once your front heel hits the ground, your head is no longer allowed to move, because once your head starts moving in that position, you're throwing all of the kinematics and the biomechanics out the window.
Great.
Any other questions? Sorry, I know I was a little long-winded on the presentation. I apologize.
Oh, good message, Matt. Okay, so let's see, Zach, you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Any takeaways?
I mean, a lot, obviously. Probably just, I mean, obviously, like, the main message, just being, like, selfish, just making sure you want to go out and get it. Or, and also another one, just being honest with yourself. I thought that was, like, the main point that I took away. Just being honest with yourself.
Great. Ollie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Coach, you asked the same question after Mark Teixeira.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure I have the same answer.
Go for it. Let Coach Matt hear it. I think it's always great feedback.
I was like Mark Teixeira obviously taught us like a bunch of awesome stuff, but like Matt, I really liked like how you like did the visual aspects too, because Mark Teixeira just like talked for the whole time. Like being able to have the visual aspects like made it much more interesting.
Cool. Thank you. I'm glad. I know that you guys are definitely a different generation, and you guys are just used to having access to videos and visuals all the time, and so it's important that you guys see those. They're not the end all be all, but it's important to see certain things, and as much as watching live television and seeing how guys do things is great, our eyes aren't good enough to see it happen in game speed. And to really break down some of those things, it's important to see some slow-mos and really break down what some of those guys are doing.
Warner, I'm surprised. Is your mute button broke? You usually have lots of questions by now.
know, a lot of my questions were answered. The presentation was very detailed, and a lot of my questions were just answered, and I really like that. One of my big takeaways was being positive through something negative, like finding the good out of your day. Maybe you didn't get that extra base hit, but maybe you hit a sac fly or got a runner in using situational hitting. That's one of the things I took away from the talk you've had before, and especially this talk.
Great, good stuff.
Awesome.
Will Short, dying to get in there.
One of the most interesting things in the presentation, I thought, was the whole being selfish aspect, because I've never heard anyone say it that way and put it in that lens, and I think that was really interesting because it made sense, and I completely understand and I think it's a great like thing for people to focus on, for players to focus on.
Good. Spencer.
Probably one of my biggest takeaways was you explained obviously being selfish, but also just watching those videos, being yourself too, especially when batting. All of those guys had their own style and their own way that they swung the bat, but they all had the same principles. And I thought that that's very important for any position you're playing, is to make sure that you know what you're doing is the best that you can be doing it, but also make sure that, or not necessarily make sure, but probably find your own way of doing it in that successfully.
Great.
Awesome. Really good.
Hey, John.
Yeah, me and Jimmy literally right before we got on the call, that's exactly what we're doing. We're on keeping our hands back as long as we could, trying to, with the hips going forward, just making sure our kinematic sequence is on point and stuff. So yeah,
Well, ask Jimmy if he has any questions before we
Hey,
go.
Jimmy, I stole all my questions. I supposedly stole all of his questions.
Oh,
He asked me if he had any questions, so I gave him some. No, you didn't. That was the second one. That was the second one. He's a liar.
Thomas, are you there?
Yes.
Thomas is our catcher, Matt. So Thomas, you have any anything to add or any takeaways?
Just the kind of being humble, and especially the Derek Jeter video kind of stuck with me when he was saying, why are you thanking me? I should be thanking you. He's just doing his job. So I think just kind of being able to kind of take a step back and appreciate the team and what you can do for the team more than what you can do for yourself.
Awesome.
Alex, I know you've asked a couple of questions already, but what's your takeaway, Alex?
My takeaway is mostly how can you self-criticize and find out what you can do to get better.
Ian, you there, Ian?
Yes. Yep.
Hey, Ian, what's your takeaway? Or any questions?
No questions. I thought it was a great talk, though. I think seeing that Mike Trout's such a good guy was really cool. Seeing inside the locker room a little bit, a really cool thing. Yeah, just great.
Awesome. And Jimmy, do you have a question? You seem like you're on the camera now.
Me?
Yeah. Did you have a question?
Yeah. I know there's some days where it's you wake up and it's kind of a rough time, getting out of bed and trying to get your work done. But is there one thing that you try to remind yourself of, on one of those days where it's kind of hard to work out, trying kind of hard to get your work done? Is there one thing you try and remind yourself of to motivate you?
Yeah, I think it changes. I think it changes throughout your career. I know that there was days that I had in high school, and it was I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything, but is that going to help me achieve my goal of getting drafted or getting a scholarship or, and then in, once I got to pro ball, it was more a question of are you gonna try to do something today to get to the next level? Are you gonna try to do something today that's gonna impact your career? And then it changed even more towards the end when I had a son, and it was like, well, I have to provide for my family, and I want to make sure that I'm doing everything that I can, and understanding I had such a great opportunity, and like even though I only played in the minor leagues, I was able to make some pretty good money towards the end of my career. And it was like, you sign a 1-year contract on a minor league free agent deal, and if you have a bad year, then you're up against the wall when it comes time to try to sign the next year. And so I think understanding, and this is going to get a little deep, but understanding your why is really important. And we all have different whys. It might be taking care of your family. It might be to get a college scholarship. It might be to help the team. But just really understanding what your why is on a daily basis, because that'll translate for the rest of your life. There's days that I wake up now and I don't want to get on my computer because I didn't sign up to be really good at the computer. I love doing video and I love doing little projects that are going to help our players, but my best quality is connecting with players, getting them to trust me, and being creative and determined enough to figure out how to help them. And so like right now it's hard for me because I want to be hands-on. I want to help these guys. I want to go out and compete, and that's how I compete on a daily basis. I don't get to play in the game, but I compete with myself on figuring out ways that I can help players on a daily basis, whether that be with their mechanics or with their mindset, or being there to talk to them about what's going on off the field. Like, we're all human beings. We're all dealing with stuff. And so I try to find ways to compete in those ways, and use that as my why, and use that as I enjoy helping people, and I feel like there's a lot of people that helped me along the way. You also get a little bit of motivation too from the people that didn't do that. And there's 2 things that I have on a Post-it note written down in my truck when I pull up to the field. And the first one is, don't forget how hard the game was to play. And that's one thing when you're not playing and you're not competing against the pitcher or the other team, the defense. Sometimes you can like remove yourself, and it just seems why is he not competing? Why is he swinging at that pitch? And so I just remind myself, don't forget how hard this game was to play, because I got to play 12 years of pro ball, and it was hard every single day.
Matt, it's great that these kids get to hear people like you guys. And the funny thing is, Mark Teixeira, they asked him what was the greatest thing he was ever told by a coach, and he said Buck Showalter told him when he was in a slump, like 0 for 12, he put his arm around him and he said, I know how hard this game is. So it's interesting that you just said that this is a game where you cannot beat yourself up. You need to come the next day and go to work again.
For sure. And I think that that's one of the great things that baseball does. Like, if you have a bad football game, you get to work on it for a week. If you have a bad basketball game, you might have a couple days off, couple practices that you get to do to get better. And baseball just keeps punching you. It really does. It's a heavyweight fight. It's a marathon, and it's just about figuring out a way to learn from what happened, move on from it, and start the next day. And I think that how that translates to life is really, really cool.
Coach Lane, do you have anything? I know you like Big Papi.
Yeah, definitely some of those parenting tips resonated. I love the idea of generally using the sport as a metaphor, since obviously not a lot of our players will end up in baseball careers, or most likely. But the choice, like it's a choice. You're making choices every day, what to bring to the table and how to respond to it. I love that. And that's great. It doesn't have to be a ball player to hear that message, for sure.
For sure.
I do have one question. how'd you get that 60-yard time down?
A lot of hard work. a lot of time in the weight room, a lot of time working on running form and resistance running. And I mean, it helped that when to Coach T's credit, when he met me, I was probably 5'4", and I was probably 180 pounds. And when I left high school, I think I was 6'2", 210. So, I mean, I think God helped me out a little bit there, genetics.
Sure.
But there was a lot of hard work that went into that, and I had some good strength coaches and some good guys that worked out with me to help push me in those areas too. So
I think just the 100% effort all the time coming out of Matt made him, build up strength. Every single day. I mean, he knows, he sweats like an animal. I mean, sweat drips off of his hat. Every single day, he worked himself into exhaustion every day for the 4 years that I had him, and I'm sure he'll continue after.
Yeah, the one part that that Coach left out of the story, and I the only reason I say it is because I think it's relevant to not to boost myself up or anything, but the practice that I kicked that guy out of was voluntary. Coach was he was there, but he wasn't running. It was everybody got together. Yeah, he wasn't allowed to be there.
It was off season, so I sort of like wandered out, and I see this kid leaving, an all-stater.
And so we had made a choice as a team that we were going to work out together every day, even though Coach wasn't there, Coach Mack wasn't there, and we had like some resistance bands and ladders and hurdles and just some stuff that we had accumulated or that somebody gave to us. I don't even know where we got it, but we had some medicine balls and stuff, and we decided as a team that we were going to work out together every day. And he was complaining, and I'm not big on complaining. It's something that irritates me pretty bad. But that was, I guess that I didn't understand. And that's one thing. I was young too, and emotional, like I said, and I didn't understand how you could come and do something with 50%.
Especially with his ability level.
Right. Yeah. He was a super talented kid too. And he was a big kid. As he gained strength, he started hitting a ton of homers. But I think that's the cool part of the story is that it was voluntary. It was us. We decided as a team that we were going to go do that. And for him to give 50% told me that he wasn't bought into working with us. Because it wasn't at that point, like us agreeing to do that as a team was like, that wasn't like, oh, hey, I'm going to go work out and get myself better. It was for us. It was for the team. And I felt like him giving 50% or whatever he was giving that day wasn't a commitment to us. And so being the leader and being the voice of reason, or not reason sometimes, I just felt like it was important that he understood that we were doing it as a team, and it was unacceptable to bring 50%. So
me and Jimmy were wondering, what's your like funniest like Coach T story that you have?
Oh man. I'll tell one, and this actually speaks.
Might have been the golf. The golf one was pretty good too, Matty.
Oh, there were some good golf ones.
Overtime in Prescott.
Yeah, that was good. We were playing in a region golf match, and the coach was like, hey, I'm worried. The other coach came up to T. He's like, I'm worried about my kids. Like, they don't know how to deal with pressure. And T was like, oh, I'm fine. All these kids play baseball. They're not concerned about that. This was pretty funny. I could sit here and bore you guys.
You remember how that came down to though? It came down for the region championship.
Yeah.
We were tied, and they made all 5 of my guys go out to the first tee, and all 5 of their guys go out to the first tee. And that's when the coach and I were, and all 5 guys played into the hole, and we added up everybody's score. and whoever had the lowest score won, or you went to the next hole. And then he was telling me, "Oh, my guys are," and I'm like, "I got 4 baseball players out there out of 5. They're gonna have a blast with this." And his kids were all golfers, and they were all tightened up that they might not win the region. My guys had no fear at all. And Matt, you ended up, we were laughing about that. You ended up par in the hole.
Yeah, and I was way above it too. There's another Coach T story that I like. We were playing. I think it was in that match, and he put me as the number 2, and I was not the number 2 golfer on the team, and I was like, "Coach, why you put me at 2?" And he goes, "Because you're gonna talk crap to the other players and get them out of their game." And I would, and I was like, "Oh, okay, I can talk crap on the golf course." And so, I was stronger and more physically gifted than some of them. So I'd pound it past them 15 or 20 yards, and I'd be like, "Hey guys, while you guys are getting ready, I'm gonna walk up to my ball. I think it's like another 25 yards up there." And they would just look at me like, "Dude, what are you talking about?" But there's another story. We were playing against a guy that Coach T had as a player, and he was coaching the other team, and him and I were going back and forth at third base, and I dove to my right, stopped the ball, and I came up and threw the ball away, and he said, "Huh, all state, nice throw, kid." And I looked at him and I started jawing back at him, and we kind of got into it a little bit, and then of course T stuck up for me and told him to stop talking to his players and stuff. And I came in the dugout, and he was like, he kind of got on to me. He's like, "What are you doing talking to him?" And I was like, "He started it. That's BS." But I said the word, and he was like, "All right, that's 8 miles." And I was like, "What are you talking about? 8 miles?" He goes, "Yeah, for every word in that, for every letter in that word." And I was like, "Oh, I should have just said F." And I said it, and he goes, "That's 12." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh." I was like, "Are you kidding me? I have to run 12 miles?" And I ran him the next practice. I sat there and ran I mean, it might have been 12 double poles. It might not have been miles, but I sat there and ran him and finished, and he was like, "All right, we're good." But there's a ton of them. I mean, I'll never forget, we were playing summer baseball, and he came up to me, and I said something about being bigger than him or whatever, and he was like, "Hey, Matty, you kidding me? You're not gonna be above 5'9", kid. You better learn how to hit singles." And I was like, "Who is this guy?" And I chose to go to school there. We had open enrollment, and obviously T was a good high school coach. The other coaches in the area were pretty slim pickings, but we had a bunch of guys that decided to go to school there because T was there, and we're able to put a pretty good product on the field for 4 years. So.
Nice. Well, I want to thank you, Matt, for taking so much time.
Yeah, sorry for being so long-winded, but I really appreciate you guys having me, and I hope that those are some great takeaways. I thought that those were pretty impressive answers from high school kids. So I wish some of our pro guys would take away stuff like that sometimes.
I was hoping Jake Roop was going to be on here because he said, "Geez, what do you got to get on to me like that for, T?" And I was going to tell him about how Matt, one day I really got on to him. He goes, "Coach, you're all over me." And I go, "Matty, I'm from a ball-busting community."
If I'm not busting your balls, I don't like you.
If I'm not busting, I don't like it. And that's exactly what I told Jake last week was, "Hey, Jake, if I'm not on," he said on to him. So that's what I used. I go, "Jake, if I'm not on to you, I don't like you."
With T, that's certainly true. And it definitely built some thick skin. And unfortunately, I'm probably a little bit harder on my guys than T was ever on me. But it's just because I want the best out of them. So. But I appreciate you guys' time, and I hope that it was informative, and thanks for having me.
That was all great stuff, Matt.
Thank you.
What do you say, guys?
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.